Welcome to a world with limitless possibilities. A world where pain and suffering are matched only by the sounds of those who endure it. Welcome to your nightmare.
Welcome to your nightmare.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Nightmare. For tonight's tale, I'm going to be narrating a story for you called The Devil's Deal. I do hope you all enjoy. They say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Mine was paved with ambition, desperation, and a signature in blood. 30 years. 30 glorious years. Decadent, terrifying years. And now, the clock has stopped ticking for good. It was a cold November night. The kind that seeps into your bones and chills your soul. I was a nobody, a struggling musician playing to empty rooms. Drowning my sorrows in cheap whiskey, I was angry, frustrated, and ready to give up. That's when he appeared. Not in a puff of smoke and brimstone, but in the flickering neon of a dive bar sign. A voice like velvet and venom in my ear.
Tired of the struggle, aren't we, Michael?
He knew my name. He knew my despair. He offered me something I craved. Fame, fortune, the adoration of millions. All I had to do was sign. A simple contract, he said. A mere formality. 30 years of unparalleled success, and then a small price to pay. My soul. Fool that I was, I didn't hesitate. I scrawled my name, the blood from a pricked finger blossoming like a malevolent rose on the aged parchment. The ink pulsed, then sank into the paper, leaving no trace but a faint metallic tang in the air. That night I went home, woke up with a pounding headache and a gnawing sense of unease, and tried to convince myself it was all a drunken dream. But it wasn't. The next day, my demo, rejected by every label in the city, found its way into the hands of a major producer. Within weeks, my music was everywhere. The crowds roared my name. The money poured in. I had it all. The mansions, the fast cars, the beautiful women. But every triumph was shadowed by a cold whisper in the back of my mind. 30 years. The first decade was a blur of concerts, champagne, and endless adoration. I was a god, untouchable. I pushed the memory of that night away, buried it under layers of indulgence. But the whispers grew louder with each passing year. Little things, a cold spot in the sun-drenched room, a fleeting reflection in a mirror that wasn't my own. The way shadows seemed to deepen when I was alone. The second decade, the shine began to dull. My music, once vibrant, started to sound hollow. My fans, once ravenous, seemed to drift away, replaced by younger, hungrier artists. The fame became a gilded cage. The fortune, a burden. I started to see him more clearly now. Not a shadow, but a flicker. A glint in a stranger's eye. A chill that wasn't from the weather. I tried to fight it. I threw myself into philanthropy, convinced that good deeds could somehow buy me an extension. I built hospitals, funded charities, adopted entire villages. But every act of kindness felt tainted. A desperate plea to a deaf judge. the deadline doomed. A monstrous, ever-growing shadow on my horizon. The third decade. That's when the true horror began. The nightmares started, vivid and grotesque. I'd wake up screaming, the taste of ash in my mouth, the lingering scent of sulfur in my nostrils. I saw faces in the darkness, contorted in agony, their eyes pleading. I knew then it was coming, and he wasn't alone. I became a recluse, barricaded in my sprawling mansion, a fortress against the inevitable. I hired security, armed guards patrolling the perimeter, their faces etched with confusion and fear as they saw nothing, felt nothing, while I trembled in terror, convinced I could feel his breath on my neck. The nightmare spilled into my waking hours. I'd see glimpses of him in the most mundane places, in the swirling cream of my coffee, in the patterns of frost on my window. It was taunting me, playing with his prey. The 30th year arrived like a funeral dirge. I had a plan, a desperate, foolish plan. I'd studied ancient texts, occult rituals, anything that might give me an edge. I found a loophole, I thought, a way to renegotiate, a way to cheat death, or at least postpone it. The night he was due to collect, the air grew thick and heavy, charged with an unspoken dread. The lights flickered, then died, plunging my mansion into an oppressive darkness. The security guards, all 20 of them, vanished. Just gone. No struggle, no screams. Just silence. Then, a voice. Not a whisper this time, but a roar that vibrated through the very foundations of my home. A symphony of torment and ancient power. Michael. Dear Michael. Michael. Time to pay the piper. He materialized in my study, not as a shadow, but in his true form. A towering figure wreathed in smoke and fire, eyes like burning coals, horns that scraped against the ceiling. His skin was like hardened obsidian, his smile a terrifying feature, in a landscape of pure evil. I believe we have an appointment, he rumbled, his voice shaking the very floorboards. I stood my ground, my heart a terrified drum in my chest. Wait! I croaked, my voice barely a whisper. I have something for you, a new proposition. His head tilted, a gesture of unnerving amusement. Oh? And what could a pathetic mortal like you possibly offer me now? More souls, I blurted, my desperation giving a false bravado. Millions of them. I can continue to create music, to influence the masses. Think of the harvest, the endless supply of despair and temptation I can sow. An interesting proposal. But I already have your soul, Michael. And it's far more delectable than a million faceless drones. But the contract! I pleaded. It doesn't specify when I have to die, just that you collect my soul. He chuckled again, a sound like grinding stone. Clever, but ultimately futile. And then he raised a hand, not to strike me, not to drag me to hell. He simply raised it, and I felt a searing pain, as if every nerve ending in my body had simultaneously ignited. My soul, my flesh began to crawl, to shift, to tear. I looked down at my arm and saw not skin and muscle, but something else. It was transforming, twisting, becoming grotesque. My fingers elongated, sharpened, growing into talons. My skin hardened, flaked, began to peel away in strips, revealing raw, weeping flesh beneath. What are you doing to me? I shrieked, the agony unbearable.
Collecting my debt,
he purred, his voice filled with malevolent joy.
But I've decided to be creative. You desired fame, Michael. Immortality, in a way. And you shall have it. But not as the rock star you once were.
The pain intensified. 1,000 knives carving into my very being. My vision blurred, tears of agony streaming down my face. My jaw dislocated, stretching, reforming into something monstrous. I could feel my teeth sharpening, growing into fangs. My spine arched, cracking with a sound like dry branches snapping. A cruel smile playing on his lips as my transformation continued. My clothes ripped, unable to contain the burgeoning horror of my new form. My skin turned a mottled gray, riddled with open sores that oozed black ichor. My eyes bulged, growing large and lidless, reflecting his terrifying image. My lungs burned, collapsing, reforming. I grasped for air, but it was no longer human air I craved. A hunger, primal and insatiable, began to gnaw at me from within. A craving for flesh.
You live on, Michael.
The devil's voice echoed through my tortured mind.
A creature of eternal torment. A monument to your own greed. You will wander the earth. A grotesque mockery of humanity. Feeding on despair and fear you once cultivated. And every soul you consume, every drop of blood you spill, will be another tribute to me.
My mind splintered, memories of my past life fading like smoke. The music, the adoration, the fame, all replaced by a singular, overwhelming urge to hunt, to rend, to feast. My hands, now clawed, reached out involuntarily towards him. He merely stepped back, unfazed.
Enjoy your immortality, Michael. It's a deal you can never renegotiate.
And then he vanished, leaving me alone in the shattered remnants of my study. A monster in the making. That is all for this episode of Nightmare. Thank you all for listening, and if you haven't done so already, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, and like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you have any suggestions, please reach out to me at nightmarepod@gmail.com. And until next time,
sleep well.